As we get started, my name is David Green. I am the Partner Engagement Manager here at Harmonize. And today we have a webinar that we're hosting with Mark. And Mark, I am going to try my best. Diacopulus.
Not bad at all. Yeah,
Okay,
Diacopolis. Yeah, nice and
there
easy.
you go. I'm
Yeah,
not going to butcher that again.
no.
But Mark from Pittsburg State, he's going to be sharing with us. This is another one of our webinars sponsored by USDLA. So thank you to USDLA for helping promote this. Um, Today's webinar is about read to reflect, video think aloud strategies, and Mark's going to be sharing a lot with us about his strategies that he has developed and executed in his courses. Um, he also has shared out uh, some of his sample instructions. I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat as well. And oh, I see. Hey, Alex. Um, this is a Padlet that in it has a couple of different of our webinars we've had throughout out this year. And so you can kind of just quickly glance over and see different resources here. This one right here, Read to Reflect. Mark has graciously allowed me to kind of copy some of his instructions and share those with you guys. So if nothing else, you'll have some good instructions here to kind of copy over and take back with you. So you can check that out on our Padlet. Uh, for our spring webinar series, we have one more webinar coming up next week with Jennifer Coleman from Western New Mexico. And then we'll be taking a break for the summer, as most of you will, as well, some of you as will be doing. And we'll be busy in our conference season. So if you do go to any conferences this summer, I know we have USDLA coming up, OTC out in California for the community colleges. We have InstructureCon, Fusion with D2L. We've got Teaching and Learning with AI down in Florida at UCF. So a lot of different conferences we'll be at. So if you're at any of those and you want to stop by and say hey to us, we'll be at some of those conferences. So before we get started, I kind of did a quick introduction of Mark, but if I want maybe give us a little bit more about you, maybe even share where you're going tomorrow. That'd be a nice little
Mm.
bit of trivia information about yourself. So
Right.
I'll allow Mark to introduce himself real quick.
Well, hello everybody. So my name's Mark Diacopolis, and excuse me, I've got allergies at the moment, so I'm coughing and spluttering like a fool. We have, and I've been here at Pittsburg State University in Southeast Kansas for 7 years, and the first 6 years I worked in the Department of Teaching and Leadership, teaching elementary education, coursework, social studies, methods, curriculum, classes, that sort of thing. And that's where I kind of developed some of these strategies we're going to talk about today. But one of the things we do is we have a partnership with a university in China. So I'm actually leaving tomorrow to go and teach for 3 weeks to a cohort of 60 students in their first year as early childhood professionals and teaching an introduction to the American education system class for them. So that's going to be quite exciting. I did it again, did it last year. It's my second time doing that, so it's always fun to do. And you know, teaching as for people who are in their second language, large lecture hall, and talking about things like teacher dispositions and stuff like that. It's quite a challenge for us to do. But it makes the job fun. Yeah.
Awesome. Good luck on that
Thank you.
on that 3 week travel.
Yeah.
I was just asking before we got started. He said 14-hour flight.
We're in
Oof.
our flight. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm. Hopefully you got a nice neck pillow and some some good reading material and things like that. It'll keep you occupied.
Absolutely.
Um, so one of the things I want to say is as we go throughout this webinar today, please go into the chat if you have any questions, things that come up as Mark is discussing and talking about what he has done. If you have questions, comments, interaction is always makes these more exciting and makes it flow a lot better if we know that you're listening and have reactions or questions. Um, but I wanted to start out by saying, Mark, we spoke, Lord, it was probably October, November last year.
Yeah.
Um, and we talked about what you were doing in your class, and it got me really excited with a lot of the innovation that you were doing just getting students to read material, which I know um, I hear. I'm a parent of an 18-year-old go ECU. You can see it there above my head. He's a college freshman getting ready to finish his first year, but getting students to read anymore is a big lift. And actually, having them digest the material and not just read to get through the material. Um, and you had some really interesting takes on how you were getting students to do that. I'm just wondering, give us a little background there. What were you seeing? What were you experiencing that made you think, okay, I need to change up some things and try these new approaches?
Absolutely. So yeah, the first challenge is getting people to actually do the reading and make it worthwhile. And often you'll see in coursework that the standard procedure is to do a discussion board post and tell me about the reading, right? It's kind of the prompt, prove you did the reading. And you've got to give regurgitate some facts or give a summary of what you read. And to be honest, I get bored with that. It's just, for me, it's boring. I've done the reading. I know what it's about. You don't have to tell me. So what I'm really interested in is metacognition and the thinking that goes on with our learners. And I teach future teachers, so I want them to be really engaged and thoughtful about what they're going to do as teachers. So as we read, the encouragement is not to tell me about what the reading was about, but really tell me about what's going on in your head at that moment. What are your thoughts? What do you feel about it? Is it scary if you're reading about someone doing this really cool strategy, but you don't feel you've got the ability to do that yet? Why is that? What's going on? Those sort of things is what I'm interested in, is the thought process of my learners. And the other challenge I also found in teaching, and this happens a lot in online instruction, I find, is we get focused in on content and getting through the sections we have to do. We go from one to the other, and we tend not to bridge or connect as we go. So one of the things I was trying to do as well is not just build up the metacognition in our learners so they do the reading and do some thinking about it, but I wanted to use what they think about as a bridge to start the next piece of instruction. So
Mm.
those were my two main aims when I started to rethink about this, because they weren't doing reading, or if they were regurgitating it, and then I was struggling to then sort of connect what we did then to what we're going to do now. So those were my challenges.
So, and it sounds like something I've heard many times before.
Mhm.
So, I don't think this is isolated to just early childhood or education students. It's just that's the way it is now. So, what was those first steps? Like, what did you first start to think through, and how did you um, come up with an idea, or what was the ideal process of trying to bridge those topics and also get them more, involved in the reading instead of just
Mhm.
skimming over and completing the task?
Well, I've been teaching for 32 years now. So one of the things I've kind of noticed from students is they're always worried about their grade and doing what they need to do to get the grade.
Yeah.
Right? That's the key thing. And when they do a reading and they tell you about it, they're trying to make sure, am I telling my instructor what they want me to say so that I can get the grade? Right. And this is kind of that cycle that goes on. They're playing this game of telling you what they think you want to hear about the reading so that you can give them a good grade. So I kind of revamped, and what did it for me actually is when Harmonize first came out, right? I'm naturally a lazy person, and the bit that I got attracted to Harmonize is the fact it will self-grade discussion posts for completion, right? So I
Yeah.
thought to myself, well, if I've got a tool that can grade for completion, I can then worry about what they're saying, right? And that kind of changed my thinking. So I then sort of had to change the perspective of my students to look. You'll get a point for doing posts. That's not the problem, right? What I'm interested in is what's going on in your head. Okay, so we started to change the paradigm and have that discussion about what you do when you post, um, and what you should be telling me when you post. And I don't want to. Don't tell me about the reading. That's boring. Right? Tell me about you. And so we had to get them out of that thinking about getting the grade. Harmonize was going to give them the grade for posting and following up. That was not an issue. Um, I was really interested in what you say. But then the next part of that is and this happens, you know, in instructional, students worry about, well, I said this stuff, but my instructor didn't do anything with it. You know, they gave me a grade and we moved on. And that's often the transaction that goes on. I do the work, I get a grade, we move on. Okay.
Mhm.
So I had to think about what it is I then do with what they tell me. Okay. If they're asking a question or if they're giving me a thought or if they're sharing their unease with something, you know, this is meaningful stuff. So what do I do with it? Um, and I decided that the next stage for that would be to start my next piece of instruction with their thoughts or their questions. So if it's face-to-face class or hybrid class, you know, that first thing in the meeting is I'd make notes as I'm listening to their videos or reading their discussion boards, and I would then come in and say, guys, here's what I heard. Right, here's what I wrote down from your discussions. You know, it takes time because it's going to could take a couple of hours to listen to a really big class of meaningful discussion, but make the notes and started with here's what I heard, and then if they had questions, I could then talk about their questions and address misconceptions or redirect thinking as necessary, and that would then connect into the next piece of instruction. So we kind of the cycle didn't finish at the end of the last session. The cycle finished at the beginning of the next one, and at the same time, if it was an online class, I'd create a video doing just the same thing. And that's the first thing they watch before we move on to the next thing they had to do. So that was the next piece in the jigsaw, just by using an idea of a discussion board and me connecting it. And that allowed them to feel heard a little bit, I felt. And they kind of appreciated the fact that I was going to talk about them at the beginning of class. It wasn't about me or it wasn't about the content, it's about what's going on with them. So that was kind of my next stage in the thinking process.
That when you said that, a light bulb went off in my head
Mhm.
because I think most people when they hear like auto grading, and especially for participation, which is
Mhm.
what self plug harmonize offers, but when you hear that, most of the time you think this is making it easier on the instructor. It's making the grading easier for the instructor. But when you said it actually turns off a lot of pressure for the student as well, they know, okay, only thing I do is post and reply. I'm going to get the points. That's a done
Mm.
deal.
Yeah.
Like, I never thought of it like that, that the student gets pressure taken off of them because they know that that's going to be easy to grade on. And now I'm actually having a conversation with my peers, with my instructor. That
Mhm.
is a different mindset that you're giving those students because you're saying we're going to make this more about substance than just, like you said, trying to earn the grade and say what they think you're wanting to hear.
Yeah, and I didn't make the grade. It's not a big piece of their overall grade. It's more, it was a small percentage, but it mattered
Yeah.
for them to do it. So they had to do
Right.
it. And then I wanted to encourage the engagement with each other too. That's not just a conversation with me. It needs to be substantive engagement. So I would offer 5 points for a discussion board, and Harmonize would give them 3 points for meeting the deadline of the first discussion. And then the instruction was, you're going to respond to two other people, which is standard. We tend to do that.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But the thing was the proviso was if someone had two responses, you go and you have to respond to somebody else. Right. So they kind of had to listen to people as they go. So they'd get the extra 2 points. And then the last thing I did, because I wanted to really encourage them to engage with each other, and I was surprised this worked, is I'll give a bonus point to the person who gets the most engagement, who engages the most with each other. Because Harmony tells you how many videos or discussion boards they looked at. And that would be something I'd report on too. Now, congratulations to Karen. She engaged with 100% of the discussions and she got a bonus point. And for a lot of that, so that motivation of getting the grade still was there, but it flipped it into how do I get the grade? Well, I have to listen to everybody now and I have to read
Yeah.
everybody,
Yeah.
and so that kind of increased too. So that's where some of the engagement metrics came up and helped. That's why it looks good. When you guys go in and check my engagement in Harmonize, it looks good because that little bit of carrot gets them
Yeah.
to do that. And it was these are adult learners, but they're they're clued into it that way. So that was really key for me. But then the next piece that you saw is well, let's take one step further. I'm interested in how they think. So let's get that thinking happening immediately. So instead of a traditional discussion board post where we're writing, that discussion, I said, well, just make a video. As soon as you finish the reading, put the book down, the chapter or the article or whatever it is you read, I asked you to read, close it, hit the video button, and give me 90 seconds of what's going on in your head. Right?
Mm.
And ask me a burning question. What's that big question you need me to, you've got going on at the time? Really think about a question. So so getting it to be a video made it more conversational, and then having them do the come up with a question at the end of it changes the way they think. They're not just reporting. Now they're thinking about the content because they're going to ask a question about it. That takes them to the next level of thinking. It starts them going from beyond thinking to critical thinking. And so that kind of changed it too. So the video made it instant, and it's so easy to do on the harmonized tool. But whatever tool you use, it works. But you just hit the button and record. And
Right.
and the idea of getting them to ask me a question at the end of it, what's the thing that's really bothering you right now? Kind of thing was also a bit of a game changer, because that then allowed them to really show critical thinking, and then allowed me to interact with them at that next level, at the next class, or on the video that I'd make, so that they'd see that I really was listening and hearing what they're saying. So that for me was another game changer.
I think it's interesting because I've done so many of these webinars and I've talked to so many instructors. Video usage has
Mm,
skyrocketed. And I think the primary reason is AI, because
mm,
just video based submissions from students have a far less likelihood of being AI generated. Um, and you can see the fakeness in videos easier than
mm.
you can um, with just text based responses. But it's interesting that in this whole conversation, you never once mentioned I was trying to get away from AI usage. It was this other stuff. But I'm sure this has been a byproduct too. You're probably seeing less or suspecting less AI usage because of the way you've set this up. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. And you can really tell if someone has created an AI response and they read it out. It's definitely, you can see it. It's because it's not that person speaking, and because I'm listening, and I can call it out rather than punish them for grades or whatever. I can call it out in the next class. A couple of people used AI. I thought yours was, you're talking off the script there. Really wanted to be a bit more natural.
Yeah.
Just bring it, and that's all I'd say. And sometimes that's enough to kind of bring them back. Now they're worried about saying the right thing, and if I focus on someone who's said something controversial, that's really good, because then or someone who had an issue that was getting to them. So it's that was where it became more authentic, and the more I focus as an instructor, I focused on the authentic rather than calling out the AI. That was there too. I only really noticed AI use in the last sort of 12 months on this. There's been a couple of students who kind of script it with AI and get AI to come up with a question, and you can tell
Yeah.
it's not really a question they would have asked, because it's not about their real experience with the reading.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, so now my question is, and we've got some good comments here.
Mm,
Karen said she loves this engagement and the cycle students go through. She said, yes, that's right on. Alex said, with learning online, I find it goes a long way for student engagement when the instructor provides a video that addresses the muddier points brought up in the discussion, or perhaps a temperature reading of how the class is getting through the content as a whole. Knowing that the instructor is reading and listening is important for students. And Karen said she agreed, as online instructor video responses increase engagement. So, do you do a lot with yourself recording videos and giving that back either in the instructions or in responses or feedback? Or
yeah, it'll happen, especially in the early stages of a class. I'll spend a lot of time doing that. So I'll have my instruction. So the way I have it set up now is my instructions are written, but then I'll make a video underneath it, because Harmonize is just easy to do that, insert a video and just have me talking. Hey guys, this is the reading. You're going to read about this. Here's what I want you to remember. I want a burning question from you. Tell me your immediate thoughts, and just reinforce it that way in the instructions. And then during the discussion, sometimes if there's a really good burning question, I'll make a quick video response, because in the moment it's really, really important that they know that I'm listening and talking in the response too. And sometimes they'll actually ask a question. What's happened recently is they start asking a question directly to me. They're saying, Dr. D, what do you think about this idea? And that's when I can come in and it becomes more of a conversation. But I also make the note and we bring that back to class, or the introductory video for the next class, or the introductory sort of teacher-led piece don't like to use
Right.
lecture because it's not really a lecture, um, becomes focused on the questions that they asked. And so, yeah, someone asked me this, and this is what I thought. And I'm interested to know what you guys think now. And it could gender another bit of discussion in class. So it's quite good. The downside sometimes, it's not really a downside, but it's a really good thing. But sometimes we'll have another discussion at the beginning of a class that could last 30, 35, 40 minutes just from the video discussion
Yeah.
when it's face to face. That's really valuable because then they're getting to revisit and think out loud. And I never cut that short because that's a thinking and learning process that's so important. It's harder to replicate that online, but at least if they get the video of me saying, here's what we did, here's what I
Right.
thought, here's the
Right.
question I was asked, here's what I think, um, that helps them at least think it through a little bit.
So the idea of like having the students to, think aloud
Hmm.
and not try to be scripted. Whenever you just said in the beginning of this, like that's what they're almost trained to do through high school, right? Like they're
Hmm.
they're just this is what you need to give us the correct information, right? How hard was it to get students to start doing this? And then are you doing this same process every class because you got to teach a new group of students how to do this?
Yeah, it's a lot of it's through modeling. So that's why I record videos, even in a face-to-face class, there's lots of videos in those discussion board piece. And it's not a video done in my office, it'll be done at home. I'm wearing a t-shirt. I'm not dressed professionally, uh,
Right.
you know, and sometimes I have like different colored hair, so my hair will spiked up or something, just to be, and I just talk to them. And it's not me reading a script, but just talking. And there's lots of ers and ums, and modeling that it's natural, I think helps. Shows,
Yeah.
there's a human side to me. Thinking and learning is a human process. It's not about perfection. It's about the messy part of learning. And if the videos are messy, I think that's appropriate modeling. It's not supposed to be a polished thing, at least for this part of the process.
Right. Right. Feedback from the students. Like, what
Mm.
have you heard from them? Like, did they find this a breath of fresh air? Have you had some feedback? I wish you wouldn't ask us to record, or
Yeah,
what's been the
some
feedback
yeah,
and
some don't
everything?
like to record. And I always give them the option to write if that's the case. But they've got to give me some substantive writing. Um, but generally, they appreciate the fact that I'm not asking them to craft a standard response. So they're not reading to remember. They're reading to think about questions, and it's a different process. So now the reading becomes valuable, well, hopefully a little bit more valuable. And that's what I've heard from them when we've done readings. They're like, this is the best chapter. I've enjoyed reading this. I actually like doing this book. Often it'll be, if there's a course book, it's chapter by chapter, or sometimes there's articles we'll do. But they generally engage in that. Um, I found that the feedback was that they were, yeah, it was work to do. It's more work because they've got to read and do a video, but there wasn't so much resentment as opposed to just another discussion board post that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And so that was for me was the key piece of feedback. The recap piece is always interesting. In a class of 25 to 30, there's usually one or two people that are like, oh, we're just going over stuff again because we want to move on to the next thing. But again, that's because they're so trained into the transactional nature of their learning. It's like, I did this class last week, I've checked the box, now we're going to move on to the next thing. Um, but often they're the people that don't engage in the discussions much anyway. So you see that
Mm,
too. There's often a correlation there. But my generally the feedback has been quite good, and they appreciate that it kind of it lowers some of the cognitive load. It's lower stakes, and it just acknowledges the learning. And I'm talking about their learning in the beginning of class too. So here's what we learned, here's what we found out. And that beginning of conversation is good. And we can wrap it up and go, right, so the next piece we look at is, and now we go on. And it kind of it makes for a nice flow. And no matter where they are coming into class with their own stresses and stuff, because we're talking about them at the beginning, I can talk about their own, we'll have a conversation about how they're doing. And then we can segue into, well, here's what you talked about. It becomes quite a natural flow, not having to be too scripted from my end either.
have you seen like I know you do this mainly for hybrid courses. Have you seen a community almost build with the students because of the interactions? I mean, I know that that's a big thing for online
Hmm.
courses is trying to build that community, but I would imagine that you even see it in the hybrid courses as well.
Yeah, yeah. So whether it's face-to-face, hybrid, or online, because they have a bit more discussion, I sometimes find um, we get a lot more people asking me questions online now.
Mm.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
That they'll, and even in discussion boards, they'll, hey, doctor, this is for you, and other people go, yeah, I want to ask that question too. So we can generate some dialogue online, and that's been quite helpful. Um, in face to face, the fact that they're having to talk to each other outside of class, and it's video, and that generates community, because sometimes we'll come in and they'll talk about, yeah, I saw your video and you said this, and so that comes up sometimes too. It's quite fun to see
That's neat.
that
Yeah.
there's not just one and done for them, because it's something that comes up, and I'll sometimes say, did you see the video so and so posted, because they asked this really good question. So, oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah, so it's kind of, yeah, that's kind of good. Um, and it does generate this idea of a learning community that exists beyond the classroom. Now, I'm quite fortunate though, because we teach our upper level undergraduate courses in cohorts. So I spend a lot of time together anyway.
Mm.
And this reinforces it just a little bit more. But even so, they could all be in the same online classes and not talk to each other. So this way I'm getting that talking to happen. So it's got to help.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, with your setup, so with the cohorts,
Mhm.
um, I would imagine now that as they go through those courses, they're more experienced in what you're doing. So do you see over time that, oh, I'm not having to train them as much at the beginning of each class. They're understanding. I shouldn't say train. That sounds so bad, but
No,
it's
no.
like a dog, like
Mhm.
training the dog to sit. But you're getting them out of that mindset that they're just trying to learn by regurgitating facts instead of actually engaging in the learning. So by the time you get to that end of that cohort, are they masters at this? Like they're really quick to go into it?
Yeah, I think because some of them are taught 3 times or at least 2 times in their process.
Hmm.
So by the time I get them into their senior year, they're doing their internship. So they're spending 2, 3 days in a school, and then they're coming back to us for 2 days. And we can, especially if it's face to face or hybrid, they're coming for that face to face meeting. They very quickly, I asked them about, I always start by asking them about their school experiences and what's going on in their schools. And they're very quick to talk and communicate and share, because they're comfortable with each other. They become comfortable with me, and they know that process. And then from that conversation, we can get into, oh, that reminds me of the burning question you had from the reading. And we can then talk about that sort of stuff there. So it
Mm.
becomes a very, very organic way to start class. And because they're they're trained, for want of a better word, they know the process. Um, there's no, sometimes when learners aren't sure what's going to happen next, and that causes a disruption in their learning. They've been there, they've done that, they know how we're going to operate, and they know the way the class is going to play out. And so they know this is a good time I can ask questions, this is a time I can raise an issue. This is, that beginning part becomes a place for them to be heard. And
Yeah.
that's where we get that happen. And so that first part of the class becomes vital because of what they've done on discussion board and how they've been doing this for so long. Um, so that for me is helpful. So yeah, it's definitely easier once they've done it second or third time around. And it's funny because I'm going to China to teach in China tomorrow, and one of my graduate assistants who's going to be working with on my course with me, um, was someone I taught 3 times. So we just had a conversation about what's my
Yeah.
expectations. Well, she's like, I know your expectations. It's not going to be too hard. So that level
Nice.
of training becomes normal. Yeah.
Um, so I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit.
Mm,
What were the mistakes? Where did
mm,
you like? Did you have any things that you said, okay, I tried this and that did not work, or man, I did this and yeah, don't do that.
mm,
Fair warning, if you try something like this, stay away from this. Anything like that
mm.
that you had stumbling blocks.
Yeah, in the early days, I tried to use like Harmonize as a tool for peer review for lesson plans.
Hmm.
Um, and this was before you could annotate on documents and stuff. And it
Okay,
became just a very clunky process. They were just doing it to do it. They weren't giving feedback. Um, Once I reconfigured how my classes would run in those environments, I created professional learning community in each class. So I kind of grouped them up. and did them through their communities through Harmonize. That worked better. So that was a big clunky piece there. Um, and
And you were trying to do that through discussions, right?
through
This was
discussions,
before
yeah,
Harmonize
yeah,
had the
before
peer
Harmonize
review.
had the pieces, yeah. So
Yeah.
now in Harmonize, because you can submit almost anything, it becomes really easy to give feedback and
Yeah. Yeah.
multiple modalities of feedback. So it becomes so much easier. But also I had to like group them into like learning communities so they weren't just randomly commenting on people's, they had to be a bit more targeted. So
Mhm.
there's a degree of classroom management, not in terms of behavior management, in like how you manage the learning to make something like that work. Um, and then with another online class, I used to do it was a face-to-face class that we had to switch online and just for scheduling purposes. And they used to do micro teaches of teaching strategies in the class. And on so I tried to replicate that in a Canvas environment, and it just couldn't work. They couldn't demonstrate their micro teaching. They couldn't put their lesson plan up and have a video and have stuff like that. So when we switched to Harmonize there, that became a lot more doable because they could make a video explaining the micro teach and talking
Yeah.
people through the process. They could post a lesson plan with it. People could give feedback into that as well, and watch it and do it. And we could monitor, and because we can monitor the engagement, we can see who's not looking at each other's stuff. So that became
Yeah.
vital too. So that helped. And because I kind of followed the same process of not worrying about applying a rubric to it as much as just get it done, and we'll rubric it afterwards, kind of thing.
Yeah.
That that allowed them to get, they had no hesitation about communicating, doing it, and being part of that process. So that helped as well. But at first it was really difficult because just trying to replicate those classroom things you can do online environment was hard. So the tool has
Right.
really helped and made it better. But there was lots of stumbles there. Yeah. Um, the other piece I get critique for is because the feedback is formative, it's not summative. Okay. So we're doing the critical thinking, but it's happening in a formative, it's not being graded for critical thinking. Um, and so there's a bit of a disconnect with some learners. I can just do my post and get the points and kind of cut short. So I've got to be very conscious when I'm reviewing and giving feedback, the verbal part or the video part, that we talk about what substantive conversation is, which were the good posts, who should they go look at, because that's me sort of pointing fingers at the people that aren't engaging properly. There's always a small percentage who are just doing it for the points. And so yeah, there's always that piece there. Um, I have colleagues who are a lot more persnickety, may not be the word, but they like to have everything written down and rubricked and done, and they
Yeah.
they they have to like be very rigid with it, and I just can't. I don't operate that way. So it's not my
Right.
way of being. So I do. I'm happy, not happy, but I'm okay if people try and take advantage because I can address it later. I'm not going to address it there in the moment. Does that make
Well,
sense?
and this is something that I think instructors, and I kind of straddle the fence. I work in an ed
Hmm.
tech company. I talk to instructors all day long, and then I have a son who's in
Hmm.
college, and two other kids who are in high school. And I think we instructors sometimes underestimate the value that students put on knowledge.
Hmm.
Um, and my son is very quick to look at an assignment he gets and he'll go, Dad, that's just busy work.
Yeah.
It's pointless. I got to do it because I got to get the grade, but it's pointless.
Mm.
And sometimes I look at it and I go, yeah, it looks that
Yeah.
way. But then sometimes I have to be like, no, 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 this is valuable right here. And it's just they don't see the value in that activity, in that engagement, whatever it may be. They're not seeing it. And I think giving students that knowledge of why it benefits them, why that's knowledgeable, how they're going to use this in their career or in future
Hmm.
endeavors, like that is something these students actually crave. And I think we just underestimate that they're just trying to get the points sometimes, but
Yeah.
there is a little bit more going on under the hood if you get them motivated the right way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we know well, we know, you know, if we're learning stuff, we, you know, we put it into long-term memory if it matters to us.
Right.
Right? Otherwise, it's short term, and we may remember it for a test, but then it's gone after we do a brain
Yeah.
scrub and sleep. So if we make it the learning about them and situate their lives or their lived experiences, or you know, you're in this career path, this is important because it's what you do, and you know, and you're not what you're going to do next year. It's where are you now with this understanding? What does it mean to you now? You're not quite, you know, you're not a teacher yet, but you're thinking about this. What does this mean to you? Right? That for me makes the learning a bit more relevant to them because it starts to matter. It's about them and it's about their chosen profession. And so it's meaningful as opposed to here's a reading, tell me what it was about. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, it's got to be about you, your understanding of it. And that's that when I learned that, you know, and it's only a recent thing we learned cognitively in the last sort of 10, 15 years that it's got to matter to the learners. Right. That once I learned that kind of changed how I went about business as an instructor.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it also, like, the students, um sometimes what is obvious to us, and I think that example, like, I have to explain to my son why this is
Mm,
relevant.
that's right.
Like, we think it's obvious.
Mm,
We think, oh, this 18, 19, 20-year old, 21-year old, whoever, there, or even 40, 50-year old,
yeah.
they're gonna get the connection between the two. And that's not always the case. It sometimes we have to be that bridge for them to
Mm,
kind of show them where that connection is. And I guess that's part of the feedback, right? Like, whenever a
yeah.
student says, "Hey, I read over this. I'm not understanding how this relates at all to teaching," and blah, that gives you that opportunity to come in and make it relevant, right? And that's
That's
kind of
right.
what you're saying, that allows that connective tissue to happen throughout the class and it not be singular.
Yeah. And the other thing it does too, I think it provides me the feedback on the class so that I know it's the right time to make that connection. Right. So I'm not just
Yeah.
imposing, this is why you need to know this. Right. It comes out of that conversation. Someone's
Ah,
struggling with it.
yeah.
Okay, this is why we need to address it. And so it becomes then my contribution becomes more relevant and more valued. It's not just me deciding to give a lecture on what they spoke about or on the next content. It's me saying, here's what I heard from you. Right? Here's why we need to talk about this because this is important and you just don't know it's important yet. And sometimes it's okay for an instructor to say it. You just don't know it's important yet, but it's important because you told me that you're having a struggle with this. Um,
Yeah.
so it's student-led learning. Right? Now, the problem with that is because it's really constructivist in essence, is you're never quite sure what that next lesson is going to look like. You know
It's
what
true.
you want to cover. You
Yeah.
know what you've got to get done. You know what their assignment's going to be, what the next reading is going to be. But you're not sure how that lesson's going to work because you don't know till they come in or till you know you've done your reading, you've got your notes and the mood of them, how that's going to navigate and play out. Okay. Or maybe they're going to ask another question because of what you've been saying. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for me, that's exciting, but for other people, that's terrifying. Okay. So it depends on who you are as an instructor, how you have to embrace that.
Well, that brings up a great point. How do you embrace that? Do you make your syllabus more like a living document, and you tell the students, "Hey, sometimes you're going to have to go back in and check this," or how do you
Yeah.
adjust
I
as those things come up?
yeah, well I mean I do a lot of my pre-planning in advance. So my syllabus is planned out week by week, assignment by assignment, date by date, and then we adjust as we go. Like you embrace that uncertainty. And I try and get them to because well, I'm training them to be teachers too. So they you know
That's true.
they
Yeah.
they never know what their day's going to be like. You know, they could have all sorts of things go wrong. You know, your plans go straight out the window.
Right.
So I get them to kind of model that for them too. And I'm very transparent and this is something I've learned to be over the last 10 years, really be transparent about the process. It's not secret, right? My process shouldn't be secret to them. Because if they know what I'm doing and they know why I'm doing it,
Hmm.
again, better for learning. So um, I always, here's the plan for today, but this is going to take up most of the plan. We'll see where we go. And, we get to a point in class, okay, we're going to change it. Here's what we're going to have to do next time. Here's a new deadline. Here's a thing. Because learning should be an organic process. It isn't just, a box checking thing. So we model that too. And if we need to cut something out later, we'll have to do that, and we'll have a conversation about that. Guys, here's where we're at. We've got 6 weeks, and we've got to go, and we've got this to do. I'm thinking, if I turn this into a reading for you, we've got more time to play with this. Does that sound good? And we'll negotiate some of that too.
Yeah.
So it's the very, so I try and be very co-constructive in that process. Even with online learning too, sometimes you'll say, this is, we've gone, this is taking us longer, people are struggling with this, so I'm going to give you another week, I'm going to change this around, here's my new plan. But again, you've got to have weekly contact with them, and make those videos every week so you can reveal the processes,
Yeah.
and make it natural. It can't just happen, and you should never just follow a script, because your learners dictate how the learning should happen. Right? It shouldn't be the other way around. And that's been a real shift in my instruction over like the last 10 years or so.
Oh, say that one more time. That was really good. What you just said. If you can remember what you said,
Yeah.
you
So the learners should be dictating how the learning happens.
the
Right?
learner should be dictating how the
Yeah.
learning
If
happens.
they're not getting it,
Yeah.
or they're slow on something, or they're fast on something, right? I should adjust to meet their needs, because
Yeah.
that's my job, is to get them through the course, meeting their needs so they can thrive and have the skills necessary to do the next thing. By the end of that semester, are they able to do what the objectives are? Not can they do it at the beginning of the semester, and are they there by the end? So adjusting as we go is part of that process. It's not just a week 1, week 2, week 3. Yeah, you plan for that, but you always adjust, because it should be based on how your learners work. If
I
we're meeting the needs.
very very UDL in principle, I would
Yes,
think.
yes, very
Um,
ideally principle.
and I think you're doing that already with, hey, give me text, or give
Hmm.
me video. If you don't want to do
Yeah.
video, do text, do this. Um, which also makes it more accessible for students as well.
Yes, yeah. And the other thing is, they're asked to write a lot anyway. They have to be written tasks for me. They have to create lesson plans. I'm like, why do you want to do more writing? Just make me a video. Right?
Yeah.
And it just sort of breaks down that, again, breaks the cognitive load a little bit, takes the pressure off. Yeah, I'm asking you to write. I'm not worried about your grammar. I'm worried about what are you thinking, and this is the key difference. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Alex, she said this was when we were talking
Mm,
about the why. She said, "Great point. The why behind the content assignment is important to let students make the connection between the practical course and what it might mean for their life and future." Um, yeah, I really think that is something that is going to be more and more key. Practical assessments, and then connecting the why to why these are practical. I've done a lot of work recently with and it's called different things in different parts of the country, but workforce,
hmm.
trade, vocational, CTE type courses. And we're seeing more and more usage of that in Harmonize, which is kind of
Oh,
interesting.
brilliant. Yeah.
And the reason why is because these students, they kind of get it more. They understand. Like, if you're taking a course that's in cosmetology, you got to know how to do hair, like,
Yeah.
and you got to demonstrate that you can do hair. We've not always asked our education students, "Hey, we're teaching you how to be a teacher. You got to demonstrate how to teach." Like
Hmm.
that. That
Yeah.
yeah, write me a paper about how to teach, and if you do that, then we'll pass you. That's not the
No.
same. And I think the vocational trades and things like that, they're getting it, and they're understanding how video based, you know,
Hmm.
that type of stuff actually benefits them a lot. Um, we've got some time left. I want to open up this. If there was any questions, I'd love to be able to maybe pass some questions on to
Absolutely.
Mark from anybody in the audience. Um, any parting thought? Like, I say this a lot to when we do these webinars. A lot of times we do these because we have instructors who will come to start using Harmonize, and they're not as innovative as you or other instructors, and they're brand new, or they're just,
Hmm.
they're in the ways that they've always done it, and they're going, how do we even start? Like, what would advice would you give to an instructor just starting out? Like, what are some ways they can be innovative, the simple, easy to kind of mimic some of in connection to what you've done?
Mm. Well, I think AI is a key issue right now, and it's very easy to set tasks that a student could get AI to do it for them. Okay, and yes, while we have to train and training is part of, the skill base is stuff. While we have to train people to do those low level skills, I'm really interested in the level of thinking they're employing and other critical thinking. So I think the first thing you need to do, whether you use a video, whether you do written discussion boards, whether you traditionally format, think about what you're asking the students to do. At what level is it? And at what level is their personal engagement going on? And change some of your prompts or your questions to be that level above. Okay. So that it's if they are going to use AI, it's just going to be the foundational piece. But what matters to them is what has to come out. So that's just starting point. Just give it that sort of thought. And if you're not feeling skilled enough to do that, then change the modality. Just by switching from written to video, changes the dynamic a little bit and can be a bit more natural. The idea is to get the natural conversation happening. So that's what
Interesting.
my first piece of advice. Yeah.
That's yeah. Um, Barbara had a question. She wanted to know, are you for testing? So this is a
Mhm.
little bit different. So we talked a lot about like discussion. She wanted to know, like for testing, are you using like a lockdown browser or anything like that to make sure that the students are not accessing anything?
I don't do many tests anymore because I'm trying to get this organic thinking work and tests don't really test their thinking. They get a lot of them are regurgitation exercises or very simple low level thinking exercises. But one of the things I've always done, and I've done this since, oh gosh, I first was using laptops in the classroom in 2003, 2004 when I was teaching in high school. Um, I've always viewed testing as a test as the last chance for the student to do some learning. Okay. So if they were to use an outside source, they've learnt it. Great. That was kind of how I started to look at it. So I don't use a lot there, and I understand why people would want to, because you don't, if you're looking at that regurgitation piece and you're measuring, can they remember this thing, or can they do a matching skill,
Right.
or can they, do some vocabulary matching? That's fine. But my thought has always been, this is the last chance they've got to learn it before we move on to something else. Right. So if they have to look up a term to make sense of it,
Mm.
they're still learning. Why would I stop them from learning? So that's always been my philosophy. No, it's not a popular one. It's kind of wackadoodle and out there, but that's how I've operated. So I tend not to use lockdown browsers, and often I've allowed students, when I was working in high school, we would take a test in class, and then I'd reopen it, and if they wanted to redo it at home, they could, because I knew they were going to learn, and they're going to learn from it somehow. So give them that opportunity and demonstrate some learning, even if they're looking up an answer, they're still learning it. They may have done no reading for the whole unit, but now suddenly they're having to do some reading.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're learning by stealth. They think they're cheating, but they're still learning. I've conned them into learning.
That I love your philosophy, if I guess that's the best word,
Mhm,
around grades.
mhm.
Like the whole I'm not doing auto grading to make it easy on myself. I'm doing it to make it easier on them. And in
Mhm.
this idea that, hey, I'm going to give a test and let you, this is your last chance at learning. I
Yeah,
think that mentality is just very unique and innovative. I really appreciate that. I think it's
yeah.
a neat concept. A different way to
It
view
does
it.
it does get me some critique, of course, because
Yeah.
what do your grades really mean? But again, my argument is, what are we measuring, right? Are my learning outcomes being met by the end of the semester,
Oh,
right? So, if someone needs to resubmit an assignment and show they've grown, fine. They're meeting my learning outcomes, right? They're getting
yeah.
there, and not everyone learns at the same time. So we've got to give them that chance to grow when they're ready. And, you've got to factor in also, especially in higher education, most of our learners that I have full-time jobs and they're coming to school here, you know,
Yeah.
and they have families and they have stress and they have all this, it's different now to how it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. And so we kind of have to redefine and reimagine what learning really looks like and what even assessment really looks like. What's the point? What are we actually assessing for is one of those key
Yeah.
questions we have to ask ourselves.
Yeah. When I first started, um, I just assumed that the words assignment and assessment were interchangeable. Just
No, yeah,
two words for the
yeah.
same thing, right? Because we do
Mhm.
that in English. God
Yeah.
bless English language. Um, and I love now that I know and understand the difference between an assignment and assessment, because an assignment is just getting someone to do an activity. An
Mm,
assessment is actually trying to see where they're at
yeah.
in their knowledge. And um, I think that's kind of what you're doing. I think that's a good metaphor or analogy, or I'm not sure what I'm trying to say there. But you know, you're trying to get more in depth. It's not just
Mhm.
give me that top line answer. Let me know that you've memorized something. Which, yes, like you
Mhm.
said, there probably are some situations where you need to be able to recite something from memory and put that onto a test. But what you're looking for is that deeper understanding.
Yeah. Yeah.
That or are you actually able to take this and apply it and understand it and say it in a different way?
Yeah.
Um,
And I think the key thing to doing that, and it's something I had to learn to do when I was going through my career, is you have to give up a bit of your power as an instructor.
yeah,
You know, I'm not, are they listening to me? Why should they listen to me anyway? Different question. Right? What am I assessing them for? I'm worried about, are they developing? It's not about me and what control I have over the situation, because I've always found that I've discovered that the best learning happens when it's almost out of control. Things really happen that are fun. Um,
yeah,
and it's that paradigm of we're in controlled environments, we're in places of learning are very much about control, and how do we police everybody, right? But really, if we're learning well, it should be almost chaos in there. And
yeah.
there's a fine line. Yeah.
Any other questions? Well, coming up at the top of the hour. So if anybody has any other questions, Mark, I just want to say thank you so much. This has been
Well, thank you for
so
having me.
enlightening.
Yeah.
Some of the things you've talked about, just great. I'm learning a lot. Sorry, I'm going to rip you off. I'm going to be talking about you nonstop when I talk to other people. I'll be using some of your lines. Um, but this was really great, and thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule. And I know you've got a lot going on, going to China tomorrow and teaching that cohort. But thank you so much for doing this with us.
And thank you. It's been a pleasure.
I'm waiting to see if any other last minute questions come in. Just to remind you real quick, we've got another webinar next week. You can sign up for that webinar on our website. And then we have the conference schedules coming up this summer. David, do you have any certificates for webinars that we are attending? You know what? We have talked about that in the past. We don't do that now, but if you want to reach out to me by my email, let me put that in. I can send like a verification email if you need to send that to somebody, showing like faculty development things. Oh, got yours. Yep. Let me do that real quick. Get that email. Copy. Okay. Oh, you went to Heather's as well. Okay, I'll get you on both of those. Well, thank you so much, Mark. Thank you
Thank
everyone
you.
for attending. This has been great. Uh, we look forward to seeing you in the future. Look for more webinars in the fall as well as we follow up. And you might even see Mark at some conferences as well. So be on the lookout for that if you enjoyed hearing from Mark today. All right. Well, thanks everyone. And as always, happy harmonizing.